Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys have been enjoying today's program. My name is Sahil Jain. I'm on the strategy team at Newlab, and I'm super excited to be speaking to Carolina and Geoff today. I have to say, Carolina and Geoff, you two individually have been probably some of the coolest, most inspirational people I've had the chance of meeting while I've been at Newlab. So thank you for our partnership, everything we've done together. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Well, that was really nice, but we feel the same way.
So before we get into it, maybe if you two just introduce yourselves. I think, Geoff, I know you got a chance to speak to the audience previously, but and then we can kind of get into today's conversation.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'll just kick it off real quick. Geoff Douglass, I'm CEO, co-founder of Mythos AI. We're a Newlab portfolio company, and Michigan Central really sponsored our main pilot in Michigan that we pulled off.
Carolina Pluszczynski, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Michigan Central, and I also head innovation, all the innovation work there.
Carolina, first of all, as everyone just saw in the video, we just hit the 1-year anniversary of our partnership in Michigan through the facility. So congratulations, first of all.
Oh, same back at you. It's been a journey, huh?
It has, yeah. And Geoff and the team at Mythos have been one of many projects that we've done there that kind of demonstrates the magic that's happening in Detroit right now. So that'll be kind of the crux of today's conversation. But maybe before I get into some questions, I think for the audience here, the red thread that connects the three of us and what we've been doing. Last year, we worked with a few different experts in the logistics and the maritime sector to form kind of a thesis and a perspective around where are some of the critical challenges today in supply chain resiliency, and thinking really about a future where we can hopefully avoid disasters such as the one that happened a few weeks ago in Baltimore, and really thinking about how do we future-proof the way in which people and goods are moving across the world. A core part of that thesis was this idea of how do we kind of disaggregate this movement in logistics networks and supply chains and nodes away from kind of single points of failure, large ports, really think about leveraging inland waterways, rail networks, moving things off of roads. And so this development and research that we did really underpinned kind of where we thought the state of Michigan had a unique right to win and a unique right to help drive technology commercialization. As a part of that work, the team at Michigan Central with Carolina and Newlab formed a partnership with a small port 30 miles south of Detroit called the Port of Monroe. For those of you that don't know and haven't heard of this small port, it is actually going to be the state's first marine container terminal, and additionally has a customs border and protection facility as well that's being developed there. So it's going to be a really interesting and strategic node for the movement of goods in the Great Lakes and opening up really supply chain networks that haven't yet existed on the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Seaway. And so through that partnership, we've developed kind of a living lab down there in the port, and with Michigan Central have started to source technology companies like Mythos AI that can start to deploy their solution in this environment. And so I wanted to kind of provide that context for this conversation, and I think really what we'll be discussing today is this idea of building these kind of place-based innovation ecosystems where we can align infrastructure, partnerships, both public and private, in order to help companies scale as well as drive economic development. So with that context, Carolina, I wanted to maybe have you talk a little bit about the origin story of Michigan Central. What was the inspiration for building this? How have you been working with Newlab in the past year and beyond?
Yeah, sure. So Michigan Central's 30-acre campus in downtown Detroit, and it really goes back to the vision of Bill Ford. It's very rare that you find a corporate company that invests, a private company that invests $1 billion into something that is an open platform. And that's because of his vision. Bill Ford had this vision that the future of mobility is going to be super hard nuts to crack. He is like collaboration. I mean, innovation is really focused on collaboration. And the thought that talent, there's this war for talent. Talent was leaving Michigan and Detroit. And so the train station in a separate context was always, if you looked at our book about the ruin of Detroit, the train station is on the cover of every single one of those books. It had been abandoned since 1988 and really was this eyesore. And so he bought the train station and the land around it and said, how do we create a place where we can do innovation together, where it's open, it's collaborative, and that we're really looking at advancing technologies faster in a real world environment. And so we've been on that journey for the last 5 years. Our partnership with Newlab is because it takes several stakeholders to pull something like this off. And Newlab is focused on the innovation ecosystem. And I was just thinking back for a second to something Elise said, right? When she was talking about why it's important for corporates to, always thinking about they could do this on their own, they can't. There is a secret sauce to Newlab. And so when we scan the market to say, how do we catalyze innovation in Detroit? Newlab was the one that rose to the top, and that's why the partnership. And they have expanded their business to their second location in Detroit. And as Sahil said, we've been at it for a year.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I think maybe a quick follow-up to that as well. What I think is so beautiful about the platform in the way that it's been designed and operated is that even though the catalytic funding has come from Ford, it is truly meant to be an open platform where there are active projects going on with other OEMs in the supply chain and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about kind of that design in terms of how you guys are engaging industry today? What more are you seeking to do with industry in the platform?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, one of the stakeholders, obviously, that we needed was really how do we catalyze the innovation ecosystem? But if you're going to get that flywheel going, you need corporates, you need industry partners. We are all facing the same problems, and that we can solve together, and we can actually fast track to solutions together. And so we've engaged with a number of partners in the different areas: multimodal logistics, low-speed aerial, low altitude aerial, and our third one is really around the transition to electrification. And so you think about all the stakeholders that those problems touch, this is the place where you can come together and work on that. The beauty of what Michigan Central is that it sits in this location, and I don't know that this was actually designed when we bought it, but it sits in this location where we have Michigan Avenue, and for those of you who don't know Michigan Avenue, it's like an 8-lane road that sits in front of, it's abnormally large, not underutilized, but that sits in front of the train station. We have the Detroit Riverfront, which is a mile to the south of us. We're surrounded by a network of expressways, and we have rail behind us, and we sit in the center of a large, very low-income urban area. So the community has strong ties, they're interested in participating. And so you put all of that together and it becomes this secret sauce. Startups covered by Newlab, industry partners, we're bringing them in based on topics. And really, the startups all need first customers. And so if I look at it through the startup lens, we want you to come solve problems with us. The startups actually need you because they need to actually deploy their solution somewhere.
Thank you so much. Geoff, I know you talked a little bit already about the specific pilot project that you did with the Port of Monroe. I'd love if you could talk to us a little bit more about kind of why was that so important to the port and to the Great Lakes maritime sector, and how do technologies like yours kind of enable economic growth attributed to that, to logistics and supply chain?
Yeah, cool. Great question. I want to start by saying this pilot was huge for us because we have been focusing our business around the Gulf states. And it turned out, without us even knowing, that Michigan and the Great Lakes had an even larger problem that we could solve, and we were able to get there first. So it's been amazing for us. This issue about our ports is that there's no digital infrastructure really in place to support them. And so we're unable to make educated decisions and planning around how to efficiently move these vessels. Literally, while we were doing our pilot project, a ship ran aground at another port a couple hundred miles away in Michigan. Got stuck, closed the channel for a period of time. That's how systemic this problem is. And so it's really about when you have a state, how many ports are there? I think there's like 14 ports in Michigan. And everybody's still operating with the same kind of out-of-date infrastructure. And so the idea is get the whole state all the infrastructure they need, and now we can start really moving goods efficiently. We can build a resilient pipeline. I use this comment that's kind of like economic security. I didn't create that. A port director said that about our technology. Oh, this is economic security. I can keep my port open. I can keep ships coming in here. So that's what this unlocks. It allows, and it also allows the states and ports that use our technology to become more competitive. And that is exactly what's happening at Monroe. The port director, super innovative guy. He's amazing, actually, Paul Lamar. I wish he could be here. And he was saying, I'm concerned we're going to lose business. We're unable to ensure the safety of our waterway. We need this information to do that. That's exactly what we provided. And now he's going out and getting future business with that same data set that we created.
Can I jump in for a second?
Please.
And so when we went and talked to Paul about a partnership for the port, we thought about what are the assets that we need to make sure that we have in our portfolio that would attract the startups to come and do real world testing. And so with Newlab, we went out and actually Sahil actually did it. We created this partnership with the Port of Monroe, and then Newlab casted their net. And not only did Mythos respond, but 50 other startup companies, because of that port, wanted to come to Detroit. So I think we overwhelmed Paul a little bit, and so we had to kind of pull back. But I mean, that is the need that's out there is real world, real environment, areas where you can test and build these solutions.
Yeah, and I would like to add, in terms of the development, Michigan wasn't on our radar as a near term, and now we're part of Newlab Detroit. We're a portfolio company, and we're talking to shipping companies there about autonomy. We're talking to other ports about depth data. We had a conversation about how we need to get the state involved, and we're going to be in Detroit. We're going to be in Michigan as a company, and that's all through this effort, which is great.
And I should say, I think our original partnership with the port was around this testing environment. And I mean, Geoff, you can probably speak to it, but I think Paul and the team at the port ended up becoming almost advisors, informal advisors, where they had a problem that needed to be solved. They had a lot of institutional knowledge as well in terms of some of the challenges. And so inherently, you found a customer as well in the Port of Monroe. And they were able to help you even think about product market fit and what were you focused on. So if you can talk a little bit about what were the challenges you thought you were going to solve when you went there, and I think you did, but you also uncovered other opportunities from a growth perspective.
Yeah, actually, speaks to the power of startups and just helping them. We solved acquisition, right? We were like, acquisition of this data is like impossible, nobody can do it. We automated that, that should be enough. We'll give the data to the engineers. We were working with an engineering company through the port, and we'd get them the data the next day, but they weren't doing anything with it. Port didn't get the data for like 2 weeks. And halfway through the project, Paul Lamar told us, you don't have a solution, Mythos AI. I'm not getting my data. I need it tomorrow. So we went, okay, we missed. We're going to switch everything up. We're going to automate the whole process. We're going to automatically process the data. We're going to put it on a web app. And then Paul went, you guys just created like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And that is the thing that all the other ports that are in our sales pipeline are buying into. It is that. And we wouldn't have done that without this. We'd still be poking around. What is it exactly that the ports need? So that was a huge, huge win for us.
Amazing. Carolina, I wanted to, you alluded to some of the other initiatives that are going on. Maybe in addition to maybe elaborating on what's in the horizon, what have been for you just generally in terms of building this kind of first of a kind ecosystem in Detroit? What have been some of the lessons that you've learned, some of the challenges and wins? Yeah. And how are we thinking about that in terms of continuing to kind of do the work that we've done with companies like Mythos?
Gosh, we learned so much in year one. What I thought we knew, we were wrong. And I think what we did over this past year is really listen. Listen to kind of the industry partners, listen to the startups about what they actually needed, partnered with the state and the city to understand what programs they had, where were their gaps in their programming that we had to kind of solve for if this was going to be successful. I also think that the local ecosystem in Detroit, because of this not having kind of the innovation-led economy there for so long, it was like this scarcity model. If I partner with you, that means you might get something and I won't, and I might go out of business. And I think over the past year, we've been able to break down some of those barriers. We actually created a consortium of 70 members within the Detroit ecosystem that we are looking to apply for like tech hub grants and those kind of things on. I think that, we know that the physical infrastructure is what's important. So, well, I'll say it's the physical infrastructure. So in the terms of the low altitude airspace, like the Port of Monroe, we're creating this environment called what we call advanced aerial innovation. It's a 3-mile radius where we can fly drones to actually learn what are the use cases, what are the policies that you need in place, how do we get to be on line of sight, can we get ready for this industry? And so we're doing that in a couple of different ways. I think it's the digital infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, the social infrastructure becomes really important. Understanding community, understanding what they need. We're doing some of this for the first time in an urban area and getting their voices in. And then I think finally it's the policy layer. And so this is with our state partners and our city partners really understanding how do we influence policy, what changes need to be made. And so when I think about what's on the future, it's continuing to learn and evolve and getting those things right.
Amazing, and I couldn't agree more. And everyone out there, like I think one of the unique levers, as Carolina just mentioned, is this ability to create the right kind of fit for purpose policy and regulatory frameworks that are allowing companies that are doing things for the first time ever to be able to operate in an environment where they're not encumbered by legacy policy and regulations that slow them down. And I think that's one of the many beautiful things about Michigan Central is we have special regulatory zones and we have the ability to fast track permitting with key regulatory stakeholders. And so we're looking to kind of build more of that. Not only in Michigan, around the world, because I think that is a key enabler for entrepreneurs and startups that are doing things for the first time and really kind of breaking barriers. Maybe shifting gears slightly, Geoff, I think one of the things that we often talk about in Newlab, in Building 128, where we are today, and in Michigan, is really kind of the serendipity of the ecosystem and of the community. Really, you walk through these doors and sometimes you don't know who you're going to meet, you don't know what conversation you're going to have. And I think there's beauty in that unknown to some extent. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the individuals, organizations, opportunities that came out of the pilot in Michigan that hopefully served benefit for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one was we're an A16Z top 50 AI company. That's great notoriety, right? For doing something hard and new. Like, that's huge to have the support. That was, I think the pilot had a lot to do with it because they mentioned it. We also connected, we're an autonomy company. At the end of the day, we want to automate ships, how they move around the globe. And we connected with local shipping companies. And we're forging ahead with relationships with those companies in the Great Lakes. So that's huge. We also got to meet Pete Buttigieg, and I got to shake his hand, and that was a huge victory. Somebody once asked me, who could you meet, if anybody? And I was like, Pete, please. And he toured the port, and the port director, he was like, you guys pull your boat out, pull Archie out, put it front and center. They invested in the port as part of this container terminal expansion. I want him to see that I'm doing everything I can to maximize the value of the investment that the government is putting in our port, and I see your technology as our way to prove that we're doing that. And so that was a huge win to be able to explain what we're doing as a startup to the secretary. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was such a cool highlight. And I think, again, back to the core mission, which is around creating this ecosystem to drive economic growth and diversification. I think one of the really interesting projects that we also got to work on was understanding some of the key workforce challenges in the shipping and maritime sector and how your technology is kind of going to hopefully augment some of those gaps. So if you can talk a little bit around the partnerships you forged there and how you're thinking about some of those challenges in the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, why automation is needed in our domain, in maritime, is because there's a huge workforce shortage. People really aren't entering it. This is true on the survey side, it's true on the vessel operation side. And we submitted an application for a workforce development grant with a local university, with Michigan Central, to build a specific workforce, leveraging our technology, our expertise. We might even help create some of the curriculum, because our staff is very senior level developers from the self-driving car industry, about automation, autonomy, get a new generation of individuals excited. You know, right now, marine is like so antiquated that people want to stay out of the industry. Like, you get on the helm of a boat, there's data everywhere, what's happening? Like, no, I'm used to my iPhone, right? So if we start bringing new exciting technologies and making them available to new generation, then hopefully we can help scale that workforce as well. Like, we also need a workforce that doesn't exist while we're developing the technology. So it's a big, important part of what we're doing.
Yeah, can I add to it? I think that is another kind of the core, when I think about Michigan Central and all of the different elements we bring, skills training is significant. Everything that we're doing is introducing a whole new set of workforce opportunities, right? Whether it's, you know, what Geoff just talked about, or if it's in, you know, drone operators, or if it's really technologists and software developers. So part of our mandate is to think about what those future opportunities are, and to really, how do we think about upskilling the communities around us and keeping the talent here in Detroit, so that not only do we have the solutions and the partners, but we also have the talent. And that's really one of the main drivers of Michigan Central.
Yeah, and I think for startups as well, that's so beneficial, right? Because you have a workforce that has been in the mobility sector for generations, that understands the unique challenges, has the manufacturing expertise and things like that. So that's, again, I think this idea of creating stickiness in regions like Michigan that have an unfair advantage to drive the future of mobility. So I think it's two ways, and startups benefit from that, and of course the local economy. So I have two kind of final questions. Maybe one for Carolina, to ask you a little bit around what has been for you kind of the biggest highlight in terms of how you've seen the innovation ecosystem change in Michigan and in Detroit over the last year plus? And what do you think continues to need to change or accelerate to kind of realize the full vision that you built this with?
Yeah, so the first one's easier. I think it's one, I think we never thought at 1 year we would have 93 companies, some from Detroit, half of them, more than half of them from globally, coming to Detroit just to start their businesses. And so I think it was a surprise and delight, honestly. I think that was a super highlight for me. I think the other thing is, this has been a pipe dream for me for 5 years. I have been working on it on paper, and in 1 year, you walk around that building and you feel the activity. You feel the collisions that you were talking about. You don't know who you're going to bump into that day. You see that magic happening. So it's coming to life. The challenges are, I think, still very systemic in really when I think about our policies and some of the programming that Michigan has, the state of Michigan has. I mean, when I think about what Michigan's economic development strategy has been, which is like the next big battery plant or the next big manufacturing plant. And I don't think the eye has ever been on an innovation-led economic development. And so because of that, the tools aren't there for them. The business attraction tools aren't there to get a startup to come to Detroit, or to Michigan. And so we have this partnership with the state becomes really important as we continue to identify these gaps and think about how do we close them. I mean, mean, because up to this point, we have been using grant dollars or private investments to help close some of those business attraction dollars. And that really isn't the goal. We have to get the state behind us if this is going to be successful.
Thank you. Geoff, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs, or given the audience we have here as well, where customers and corporations that ultimately are adopting these technologies are so critical to be involved in? What advice would you give these types of stakeholders that are important to you, other entrepreneurs that are also looking to do their first of a kind pilot in these scenarios? How should they think about these opportunities? And maybe, I think, why did you choose Michigan? Why did you choose this ecosystem? We'd love to maybe share that insight.
Yeah, I can answer that. There's a few startups here, which is cool because they've come up to me today. And I got this really good advice from one of our advisors who ran innovation at Shell. He's part of he's on our board of advisors. He's working on their shipping department. And he said, listen, Geoff, what you're going to do is super hard. So get ready for that. But here's the secret. The people that are in, that's who you dig in with. And the people who aren't in, don't give them another minute. That's not how you're going to grow your company quickly. And that was actually the best piece of advice that I have gotten so far on my journey, right? The investors that have been in, they were in, done. The ones that are, okay, I'm sorry, you'll be here maybe in the next round. I really respect you, but I need to move faster than this, right? And so, and it's the same with our customers. And so that's like my one bit of advice. You have to ride the wave. And in time, the wave gets bigger and bigger, and you start kind of washing over the others that were kind of on the cusp, right? And so to tie into your question and your second question, that's what Newlab was for me and Michigan Central. It's like, thank you guys. You have really done a lot for our company. And just basically you guys are like, this is awesome. We're going to do it. The whole pilot came together in like a month, and we were there doing the work. That's riding the wave. That wave got us in front of other stakeholders in Michigan, got us into other stakeholders around the country, got us into other investor conversations. And so like that would be the best advice I could give at the moment, I think, is you have to go with the flow. But you guys really helped us by being that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, super exciting what you're doing. And I honestly, I remember when you had a pitch session, and we talked about it earlier, the technology went crazy. I mean, it wasn't a good day for Michigan Central's technology, but it was for you. And I remember being in that room, and there was congressional delegation there, there was the port folks there were investors there sitting there, and I'm watching Geoff do his pitch and the video around it, and you get like this feeling like choked up, like we're actually doing this. This is happening.
You're totally doing it.
Yeah, we're actually doing it. We're doing it together.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. Thank you for being change makers. We need more people like the both of you in this world. And thanks for sharing everything that you guys have been working on. And Newlab, we're very grateful to be working with partners like you both. So with that, please give a round of applause to Carolina and Geoff.
Thank you, guys.